What's going on, guys? Welcome to the channel. In today's video, I will be creating a tier list here in Tower of God New World. But before I get started on the video, make sure you guys comment, like, and subscribe, and also turn that post notification bell so that you guys can always stay tuned as well as when I post new videos. I'd really appreciate it. And if you're new here on the channel, I make various guides and videos on multiple games such as Aether Gazer and Harry Potter's Magic Awaken. So if you guys are interested in those games, you can click the channel down below and start watching those videos. But anyways, let's get to it. So I'm going to be making a tier list for all of the characters so far in the game. Now, I haven't played with every single character, so I might not put them on a tier list because I haven't tested that character out. But even if I haven't, played with the character, I've watched other tier list videos. I'd make sure that I watch other tier list videos so that when I make my own tier list, I can know, what to put that character, what tier to put that character in. But anyways, let's get to it. And this tier list, I'll say that this tier list is 50% based off of my opinion and 50% based off of, actual facts. So we have the first character right here, this guy. So I haven't played with this guy at all, but I have the game open with me right now, so I'm gonna try to check his kit. So this guy, what he could basically do is that his basic attacks basically pierce targets, and his attack raptor swiftness does not fluctuate, but his attack fluctuates by 2% for every point of swiftness fluctuation. So his passive is basically just making his basic attack way more complex and stronger. And for his active, he points the umbrella at the sky to absorb lightning Shinsu, increasing his attack by 24% and critical hit rate by 24% for 10 seconds. And his second active, he opens his umbrella and stands in place for 5 seconds, increasing his forward-facing physical and magic resistance by 80%. He cannot move while his umbrella is open, but he becomes immune to jolt, and his attack coefficient of his basic attack is increased by 160%. And for his special skill, he becomes immune to jolt and gathers Shinsu at the tip of his umbrella. He then shoots in a straight line to deal 200% of his attack as damage 6 times. The enemy hit by the last attack is knocked back. So reading his kit so far, it seems like his entire kit just revolves around being immune to jolt and enhancing his basic attack. Now, the problem is that with his active skill, I think for his special skill, for his active skill, he basically has to like stand still in order for him to when he's using his second active skill, he's just standing still. He doesn't really do anything. So I feel like that's like one of the biggest flaws about him, because I feel like while he's standing still, you could just immediately take him down because he's just standing there while he's using his second active. So reading his kit so far, I'm going to put this guy at a solid C tier for sure, because of that second active skill. The fact that when he's using his multi-purpose umbrella, he's just going to stand there and he's going to have the immunity, but at the same time, he's just going to stand there and basically just, he's basically AFK on the field. Now, we have the next character, Bam. Now, Bam is an amazing support character, especially if you put him in a yellow team. He's an amazing support for hats and also an amazing support for other characters such as Warun. He's really, really good. So Bam, I don't even have to say anything. Bam is honestly a solid A tier for sure. Bam is an A tier. I feel S tier is when like the character is just straight up busted and that character could basically work in any team comp. Bam, he is amazing, but can he work in every single team comp? I don't know, because you have to consider the fact that if you're going to put him in a certain team comp, Bam could immediately die in that team. So you have to put him in a team where he can survive. Now we have this guy right here. This guy, going up against him in PvP is absolutely, not PvP, but PvE is absolutely annoying. But reading his kit so far, he recovers 8% of his HP lost upon taking a critical hit. He recovers 16% of his HP loss if current HP is 50% or below. So that's his passive. His passive basically recovers HP lost upon taking a critical hit. So whenever he's about to take a crit hit, he's going to recover his HP. For his first active, Shinsu Domination, Ghost dominates the Shinsu inside his body, increasing his magic resistance by 80% for 8 seconds and dealing 200% of his attack as damage to 3 nearby enemies every second. And for his second active, Ghost causes an explosion by stabbing the ground with a spear imbued with Shinsu, provoking nearby enemies for 7 seconds and dealing 400% of his attack as damage to the target. And for his special move, Ghost recovers HP equal to 600% of his attack and deals 200% of his attack as damage to nearby enemies. In addition, he decreases the enemy's magic resistance by 80% for 5 seconds. Now, reading his kit so far, he seems like a DPS tank because all of his actives and all of his passives, it comes off as he is a tank that can do damage. The more you hit him, the more he'll be able to do damage. Now, the fact that he's a tank, his scaling could be a little bit off because he's a tank. So the magic resistance debuff is absolutely not that bad. But I feel like you can easily counter this guy. Like, if you're going up against... Because if you're playing PvP, you will never see him in PvP, that's for sure. Because if you have an Evan, Evan will literally just counter this guy immediately. Because Evan has that immortality buff. So, let's say this guy's about to do some big damage. Evan is just going to pop that immortality. And he's going to do absolutely nothing. So, I feel like he is a decent character when it comes to... doing damage and being able to survive. He's not that bad, but I feel like there's way more other characters, like way more other tanks that have way more value and they have a better tank, like they have better tank capabilities for sure. So this guy, reading his kit so far, I'm definitely gonna put him... This is a tough one because this guy right here, that AFK active skill is just really bad. But this guy, he has potential to not... He has potential to be pretty decent. So I'm gonna put him in a solid C tier for sure. I'm gonna put him above this guy in C tier. Because as a tank, his scaling is gonna be low. Because the whole purpose of a tank is to take damage, not do a lot of damage. So this guy is definitely in C tier. Now, the next one we have is Data Zahard. Now, Data Zahard, he is a really, really good SSR+. The reason why he's extremely good is because he basically has invincibility. So, for his passive, Data Zahard's weapon transforms according to his remaining HP. For 3 seconds while the weapon is transforming, Data Zahard becomes invincible and the weapon does not revert to its previous form. And for his active, Data Zahard's magic resistance increases by 40% for 10 seconds when using the power of Black Hole Sphere. The Black Hole Sphere creates an explosion dealing 600% of his attack as damage to nearby enemies, knocking them back, then silencing them for 3 seconds. That silence is really, really good. The fact that he can silence your enemy, like the fact that he can silence people is actually pretty nice. Because let's say you're in PvP and Evan is about to use his immortality buff. Data Zahard might be able to silence that and stop him from using it. Now, for his second active, Data Zahard's evasion increases by 200 for 10 seconds. Evasion is an amazing stat for tank units. Upon evading, Data Zahard counters his attacker with his Golden Needle. The Golden Needle deals 200% of his attack as damage to the target 3 times and jolts them. Every 10th counter attack enhances the Golden Needle, dealing 400% of his attack as damage to enemies near the target and stunning them for 2 seconds. So this second active is what makes him really, really good. And for his special move, he basically has like different tiers. Basically, I think different weapons, and those different weapons have like different abilities. Basically, they provide him different buffs and stuff like that. So Data Zahard, he's a really decent character. He will really carry you far, especially if you're interested in PvP. If you're a PvP type player, Data Zahard is absolutely amazing in PvP. So Data Zahard for sure is a solid S tier for sure. Now his ultimate his ultimate doesn't do damage. I don't know, I think it's bugged. I don't understand, but his ultimate doesn't really do damage. But Data Zahard is for sure S tier. Now the next character we have is Data Mashni. Now Data Mashni, she is basically an assassin, but the good thing about her is she has like a immortality where she will take a bunch, like when you do damage to her, she takes 0 damage for a certain amount of time. So for her passive, it's pretty long, but it's called the front row lightning pill. I'm gonna keep it short, but she basically consumes the lightning pill. She gains 100 lightning pill gauge. Lightning pills effects are removed when the gauge hits 0. The lightning pill gauge decreases by 10 every second, but increases by 10 whenever Data Mashni uses a skill. While the lightning pill is active, Data Mashni's attack increases by 120% and her HP will not drop below 0. Her passive is what makes her extremely busted. The fact that her HP does not drop below 0, she basically has immortality. So if you pair her up with like an Evan, she just won't die. She won't die at all, because if her passive continuously procs and Evan procs immortality, she just won't die. So Data Mashni, just reading her passive so far, she's a solid S tier for sure. Especially if you're playing PvP, she is an absolute beast in PvP. I went up against a bunch of Data Mashni teams, and they absolutely destroyed me in PvP. So she is a really, really good character. Now the next character we have is this girl right here. I have her, but I haven't used her yet. But I'm gonna read her skills. So for her passive, missing dashes towards the enemy at the start of the battle to deal 300% of her attack as damage, stunning them for 3 seconds. She then attacks one more time to deal 200% of her attack as an additional damage. So she's basically like a DPS unit. And for her active, she basically activates like a reflection mode for 10 seconds to increase her range damage resistance by 40%. While this mode is active, 200% of the range damage missing takes is reflected back to the enemy. So reading her kit so far, it seems like she's mostly, of course, a damage unit, but her first active is actually pretty unique because she has like a reflection. So whenever she's getting hit by enemy projectiles, whenever she's getting hit by ranged attacks, she's going to absorb that and then reflect it back to the enemy. So the thing is that even though she's taking that damage, even though she's able to reflect that damage, she's still taking the damage because the damage resistance is by 40%. Now the thing is that will she be able to survive all of those projectile attacks before she can reflect it back? Because if she doesn't have, if she's not able to survive all of those ranged attacks, then she won't be able to reflect them back and she'll just die instantly. So I feel like this character, she can be pretty good if you build enough damage, like if you build enough evasion, or basically allow her to survive on the field longer in order for her to cast that reflection attack. So reading her kit so far, her active 3, missing pummels the enemy with the barrage of fists, dealing 80% for attack as damage. The jolting, she has the status effect immunity for 10 seconds while berserker mode is active, and she has increased swiftness by 40. Reading her kit so far, she's not a bad character, but I feel like her kit should have been a lot better. Like the swiftness by 40, that's kind of small. If they give her like an additional swiftness, like around like 80 or something, or her attack increases by 50%, that would be actually decent. But reading her kit so far, I'm gonna put her at a solid B tier. She's not a bad DPS unit. If you're trying to find a DPS unit, you can definitely use her for sure. But you just have to make sure that she survives. So you have to have like an Evan to make sure she survives. Next character we have is this support character right here. I don't know how to say her name. I'm just gonna say Sion Wu. Sion Wu, she's basically a support. In her skills, she basically regenerates energy. She regenerates energy, and she also, she recovers 200 energy with her passive. And for her active, she deals 100% of her attack as damage 4 times to the enemy who has dealt the most damage to allies. Each hit steals 200 of their energy and locks them for 2 seconds. Her active and passive is absolutely amazing. The fact that she's able to steal enemies' energy is just clutch. And the fact that she's able to give energy is absolutely good. So she's basically like a battery unit. And she's also a unit that can steal energy. And for her second active, she finds the enemy's weakness, decreasing their defense by 24% for 10 seconds. So not only does she have uh, a battery passive, she also has a debuff passive where she's able to completely shred the enemy's defense for 10 seconds, which is absolutely nice. And for her ultimate, she attaches some type of, I think that's a, yeah, I think it's like a shield, blocking all skill attacks 3 times for 8 seconds. In addition, it deals 200% of her attack as damage to the attacker and stuns them for 3 seconds. So her special skill is basically like some type of shield, and that shield will do damage and it will also stun enemy units for 3 seconds. So reading her whole kit so far, this is a really solid support character. 100% putting her in A tier because she is absolutely amazing, really good free to play unit. Now the next character we have is this girl over here. Now I don't have her, but let me see if I can read her kit. So she is a warrior, so she's basically a DPS unit. For her passive, she gets fired up when... Oh, it's basically a guy. I'm tripping. I thought that was a girl. My fault. I thought that was a girl. Prince gets fired up when his HP drops to 30% or below, removing debuffs and status effects and activating new Prince mode for 10 seconds. New Prince mode increases his defense by 200% and his attack by 200%. Now, his passive is actually not that bad, but I feel like the defense plus 200% is just not that good. I feel like in every game, like if you're a DPS unit, defense is a trash stat for just DPS units. I feel like the best stat for DPS units is damage resist or status immunity. That's like the best buff that you can give to DPS units because status immunity is able to help the unit stay alive, but defense is more of like a stat for tanks. So the defense percentage boost is really not that good on her. The attack percent boost is good, but the defense is just not good. And plus, her passive has a limit and it's only once. So I guess that she can only proc this passive one time per battle, which actually kind of sucks. So I don't know. That's her passive. For her active, she summons a Auril and locks nearby enemies for 4 seconds, dealing 360% of his attack as damage and decreasing their magic resistance by 40% for 12 seconds. So his active is a debuff and also just damage. And for his second active, he gathers Shinsu in a needle and stabs the enemy. A Shinsu whirlwind forms in the same direction, dealing 400% of his attack as damage to enemies in a straight line, then decreasing their magic resistance by 40% for 8 seconds. So far his two skills can decrease magic resistance, which is not that bad. And for his ultimate, he deploys a triangle field around himself for 7 seconds, dealing 620% of his attack as damage, and decreasing the swiftness of enemies in range by 48. When a triple field disappears, his lighthouse explodes to deal 620% of his attack as damage to enemies in range, jolting them. So reading his entire kit so far, he's basically like a debuffing slash damage unit. The magic resistance debuff is actually not that bad. And I apologize, guys. It's raining outside right now. So if you guys hear, a little thunder, I apologize for that. But anyways, his kit seems pretty decent. The debuff, the magic resistance debuff is not that bad. But I feel like for his passive, the fact that the limit is one time, I'm thinking that you can only proc his passive one time. So I don't know about that. But reading his kit so far, doesn't seem like a bad character to use. So I'm gonna put this character at a solid. I'm gonna put this character at a solid B tier for sure. Doesn't seem like a bad character. Now for the next character, we have this girl right here. We have Quaitro. I think that's her name, Quaitro. Now she's a mage, so basically she's going to do like long range damage. She For her passive, she struck her Quaitro burns enemies struck by his skills. This is a dude as well. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I'm literally just misgendering everybody, but he decreases their HP recovery by 30% for 5 seconds. Burned targets take 24% of his attack as damage every second. So his passive is more like a decreasing. His passive includes a debuff and also a buff as well, which increases attack. Now for his active, Quaitro shoots flames for dealing 60% of his attack as damage every 0.5 seconds for no every yeah for 3 seconds to enemies in a fan-shaped area. His active seems pretty lackluster, and for the second active, Quaitro creates a ring of fire and a barrier equal to 40% of his max HP for 7 seconds. Enemies that touch the ring of fire take 60% of his attack as damage every second. In addition, his attack increases by 20% while the ring of fire is active. And for his ultimate, he drops 7 fireballs over an area, each dealing 100% of his attack as damage to enemies and jolting when targets are struck multiple times. Critical damage increasing by 20% when with each consecutive hit. Quaitro becomes immune to status effects while using his skill. So his special is actually not that bad. I feel like the thing that really makes his kit weird is the fact that when you they said for his second active, when you build HP on him, he's going to get like a barrier equal to 40% of his max HP. So that right there, I feel like if the barrier equal to his attack percentage instead, that would have been a lot better, because so far his entire kit revolves around attack percentage, but the fact that the barrier is equal to max HP is kind of weird. So I want to put this character at a solid C tier as well. I feel like this character, their kit would have been a lot better if everything just scaled off of attack instead, but the max HP just makes everything weird. Now for this guy right here, he's also a blue unit. So I'm trying to find him. Okay, so this guy, Quant, is a blue unit. For his passive, he blocks the light with Shinsu every 10 seconds, applying Blackfish for 4 seconds. His evasion increases by 120 while Blackfish is active. Now his passive is actually not that bad. The fact that he gets that 120 evasion boost is actually pretty good. He's basically going to take 0 damage with that evasion boost. For his first active, he dashes towards the enemy with the lowest HP and deals 400% of his attack as damage. He then dashes towards a random enemy to deal 400% of his attack as damage. While doing so, he jolts all enemies in his path. For his second active, Quant jumps towards the enemy to deal 400% of his attack as damage. He creates a dark area lasting for 10 seconds. Quant's swiftness increases by 40 and the enemy's acceleration decreases by 40% while in the dark area. So his active basically lowers the enemy's acceleration. I think. Yeah, it basically lowers the enemy's, I think that's accuracy. Let me check, because I don't want to be wrong. It's either accuracy, because it says ACC. Is that accuracy, or let me check. I think that's accuracy. Yes, no, it's accuracy. So he basically lowers the enemy's accuracy. So he's going to take less damage because he also has that evasion boost and the accuracy debuff. So far the only good thing I see in his kit is that accuracy debuff and the evasion buff. And for his special move, he randomly ambushes enemies in range 8 times, dealing 200% of his attack as damage each time. Quant prioritizes attacking targets that haven't been ambushed yet. Quant's attack increases by 50% against targets that have already been ambushed. Quant becomes invincible while using this skill. So, reading his kit so far, he seems like a unit that can survive on the field because he has 120 evasion, he has the 40% accuracy debuff, and he also becomes invincible when he's casting his special move. So reading his kit so far, he seems like a pretty solid unit in terms of survival and doing damage. So I'm going to put him at a solid B tier for sure. He's not the best because there's other characters that can do, way better than him, but his kit is not that bad. Now we have this next Tink right here. Now this character is solely based off of my opinion, because I feel like this Tink unit is just absolutely crazy. So this guy right here, he's a Tink, and his skill, for his passive, he creates a barrier equal to 100% of his attack for 2 seconds upon using his basic attack. So whenever he's using his basic attack, he basically gets a barrier, which is actually pretty nice. And for his first active, He reinforces his body to increase his attack by 20% and defense by 60% for 10 seconds. While this skill is active, defeating enemies further increases his attack by 20% and his defense by 60% for 10 seconds. Does not stack. Now, I feel like that's the main thing that I don't really like, is the fact that his active doesn't stack. But it's still not bad though. Like, basically, the more enemies he attacks and defeats, the more his attack increases and defense as well. For his second active, he kicks the enemy to deal 200% of his attack as damage and knocks them down for 3 seconds. He then jumps to the target to deal 200% of his attack as damage to nearby enemies. Now, his second active is what I like about him, because his second active is an animation. So it's like a long animation, and your unit won't be able to do anything when he casts that animation unless your unit has some sort of status effect, status immunity effect. I don't know, but his second active has like an animation where he'll kick you and then your character will get knocked down and then he will jump up and do damage. I feel like his second active is actually pretty nice and it can come in clutch in a lot of situations. Now for his special skill, he pumps up his muscles to increase his attack speed by 60 and max HP by 100% for 15 seconds. Now his special move is actually, that attack speed is actually pretty nice, but I feel like the max HP by 100%, I feel like that's kind of weird. It would have been better if they added some type of, he gets an invincibility for 5 seconds instead. I feel like that would have been way better and that would have matched his kit, because if he's able to proc that invincibility, then he can proc his passive, which basically makes him create a barrier. So I feel like the max HP is, kind of weird, but other than that, pretty solid character. I would put him, in my opinion, I would put this guy in a B tier for sure. He's not bad, pretty good unit. Now for the other characters, I haven't played with these characters, so I don't know what to really say about these guys. Let me see his kit first before I even say anything. So this guy's a blue unit. Blue units are absolutely garbage right now in the game. Until they release like an SSR Plus blue unit or an SSR unit, blue unit that's actually pretty good, blue units are still bad in the game so far. So this guy, his passive, if there are no other enemies near the closest enemy, this effect isolates them. His attack increases by 120% when attacking the isolated target. So his passive is trash because it says that if there are no enemies near the closest enemy. So in order for his passive to even work, he basically has to find an isolated enemy. But that's not going to happen, because the only way that this can happen is if like the other team is using a ranged unit. If your enemy team is like has a ranged unit, the ranged units are always by themselves. So I feel like his passive only works against ranged units. Tanks are always surrounded by other units such as DPS units and mages, but this guy, he's only gonna isolate ranged units, and in order for him to even isolate that ranged unit, he's gonna have to go all the way to the enemy's formation, and he's just gonna die immediately. So reading off his passive so far, this guy is just pretty much trash. And his active, he summons his rel to pull the furthest enemy closer. Now his rel is actually not that bad because he can basically pull enemies to your formation and then you could just immediately take that unit down. So the rel is actually not that bad. For his second active, he attaches an explosive mine to the enemy for 5 seconds and reducing the swiftness by 20. The swiftness by 20 is kind of it's kind of meh. But reading his kit so far, the passive is just, I feel like the passive is what makes him really, really bad. The fact that that passive can only work against isolated units. And it's not even the fact that he can get that unit isolated. It's if that unit is isolated. So it all depends on, what other formation the other team is using. And if they're using a ranged unit, then it might work. But yeah, this guy is definitely a C tier for sure. For the next guy, we have, I think this is a green unit. Yes, this is an green unit. So this guy, his passive, he gains 2 evasion for every 1 point of swiftness. His attack increases by 8% for 10 seconds upon evading an attack. So, reading his passive so far, you basically want to build a bunch of evasion on him because every point of evasion will increase his swiftness. Will like basically increase 1 point of swiftness. Now for his active counter, he delivers a swift kick to an enemy to deal 400% of his attack as damage and stuns them for 2 seconds. Eden then teleports behind the furthest ally. Upon successfully teleporting, Eden increases his swiftness by 20 for 10 seconds. So reading his kit so far, he seems like a speed character. He seems like a really quick character. He's going to be around the battlefield just continuously, going around, doing damage, teleporting. He seems like a really quick character. And for his second active, full speed, Eden quickly moves behind the farthest enemy, dealing 400% of his attack as damage to all enemies in his path. In addition, his swiftness is increased by 20 for 10 seconds, so he gets an additional swiftness for his second active. For his special move, he teleports to the enemy with the lowest current HP to deal 600% of his attack as damage. Once the attack lands, the target is knocked down for 3 seconds. Eden then quickly returns to his original spot. If this attack kills an enemy, Eden's swiftness increases by 40 for 10 seconds, and Eden is invincible while using his skill. So, this guy seems like a speedster. He seems like a speed unit. He's always running around the battlefield, taking enemies down, doing damage, getting that evasion buff and that swiftness buff. He seems pretty good, pretty solid. So reading his kit so far, I'm definitely going to put this guy at a B tier because he's able to become invincible for his special move is actually pretty good. And he returns to his position. So after he uses his special move, he's going to return back to his original position, which is actually pretty nice. Now, the next character that we have is Endorsi. Now, Endorsi, I don't even have to read her kit that much. This character is really good. If you want to use, if you're going up against an enemy formation and that formation is just absolutely busted, Endorsi will literally interrupt that formation. The reason why Endorsi is really, really good is because she can go to your enemy formation and disrupt that enemy formation. So let's say your enemy team is using, let's say that they're using a hats. Endorsi is gonna go to their formation and the hats is gonna focus on Endorsi instead. It all depends on how you put, like, what position you put your hats in. If your hats is in like the front line, I don't think you will pay attention to her. But if your hats is in the back line, Endorsi is just going to completely distract Hats, and then Hats is going to focus on killing her. So I feel like Endorsi is an amazing unit when it comes to disrupting formations. So I'm going to put her at a solid A tier for sure. Really good character. Really nice. Now, the next character we have is this chicken right here. This chicken is absolutely annoying in PvE for sure. But his passive, he innates hardness, immediately removes debuffs from him that deal constant damage. And his attack speed increases by 80 for 6 seconds, so he has an attack speed buff. For his first active, he fires a fan-shaped flare of feathers in front of himself, dealing 600% of his attack as damage to all enemies in range and decreasing their magic resistance by 40% for 5 seconds. He becomes immune to status effects while using this skill. And for his second active, he strengthens his feathers with Shinsu, increasing the attack coefficient of his basic attacks by 160% and his attack speed by 40 for 8 seconds. So reading his kit so far, he seems like an attack speed unit. You want to put him in a team where he will benefit with that attack speed buff because he is a ranged unit. And for his special move, he throws a shuriken dealing 1000% of his attack as damage to all enemies in its path. Upon hitting 3 or more targets with the shuriken, the skill also resets feather boost cooldown. So reading his kit so far, he's really like a DPS attack speed unit. Not bad. I feel like there's way more better characters in terms of damage, but this chicken, if you're going up against him in PvP, he will literally one-shot your team. So this character has potential to actually be really good, to be a really strong DPS unit. So I'm going to put this character in a B tier for sure. For PvP, no, but for PvE, he's a pretty solid unit, especially if you have like a yellow team. You can pair him up with Evan, you can pair him up with a Bam so that Bam can increase the attack and the energy as well. So he's not a bad character. You just have to build him the right way and put him in the correct team. Now the next character that we have is Yuri. Now Yuri is a green unit. She's a tank. Yuri is an amazing unit to use in the early game, but once you're like in the mid game and the late game, she gets her value just diminishes. Like she just becomes a little bit more like she just doesn't become necessary anymore. So she's basically like the first character you get in the game. She's not a bad unit. She's not a bad tank. She can carry you far, but you're gonna realize sooner or later that she's gonna stop providing. Like she's not gonna provide any more value in your team whatsoever because there's gonna be better tanks. So I'm gonna put Yuri at a solid B tier as well. I'm gonna put her at the top B tier list for sure. She's in the top B tier list. If you get enough copies of her, she's going to be really, really good. She's going to do a lot of damage. So she's going to be a solid B tier for sure. Now we have this other tank right here. This guy. Now, he is a blue unit as well. So this guy, he is a tank. I played with him. And I also, when I made a video on him as well. So he's like a tank that could provide shield for your ally units. Now, my issue with this guy is that his animation to proc that shield is so long. It takes him forever to give that shield to other units. So, right off the bat, I'm putting this guy at a solid C tier for sure because that shield, I feel like he would be a lot better if his animation was a lot quicker. It takes him so long to proc that shield. Every single time I'm about to use his shield, he's always standing there for like 5 seconds and he instantly dies because it takes him forever to use that shield. So he's definitely C tier. If his animation was a lot quicker, I feel like I would put him in a B tier. But for now, he's a C tier for sure. Now the next character we have is Karaka. Now Karaka is a tank unit and he is really, really strong. So reading his skills are pretty long, so I'm not going to read a lot of it, but reading his, like basically overall his skill, his ultimate basically allows him to do damage. He has a resurrection. Basically, he's able to revive himself when he dies. So he basically has 2 lives. When he's about to die the first time, he's gonna sit there and recover some HP, and then he'll be able to resurrect himself. So that resurrection is actually pretty good. His special move allows him to do a lot of damage. If you guys watch my videos on Karaka, his damage potential is crazy. And I feel like out of every single tank in the game, Karaka can do the most damage out of every tank so far. His damage is just insane. He also summons these dark orbs that can continuously do damage, and he also has, I think he has a thing called Shadow. I need to find where it's at. He has a shadow. I'm trying to figure out where it's at, but he basically has like this type of shadow thing where it's like a debuff. I don't know where it's at, but anyways, he basically has a lot in his kit. He's a really solid character. I'm gonna put him in S tier for sure. Not only because he's an SSR plus, but that ultimate just does so much damage. Now the next character we have is Khun. Now for Khun, if you guys haven't watched my videos on him, he is an underrated SSR character. This character is absolutely amazing. His stun potential is crazy. When you use him in PvP, he will be an absolute god in PvP. Khun, straight up A tier for sure because of that stun. The fact that he has an AoE stun is just perfect. The only thing that can counter that stun is of course status immunity effect. Other than that, his stun and the fact that he's able to buff up your ally, the fact that he's able to buff up purple ally units attack percentage is absolutely insane. And he also lowers defense, which is actually pretty good. So Khun is definitely A tier for sure. Now I'm gonna go ahead and go to Hwoarang right here, because there are some characters right here that I didn't even try out yet, so I'm not gonna put them on this tier list. But for Hwoarang, you guys already know, man. Hwoarang, absolutely amazing character. You want to make sure that you have a lot of copies of her, because when you have a lot of copies of her, she's going to survive more, and you want to pair her up with Evan. But Hwoarang, 100% S tier for sure. This character, it's crazy how she's a support and she can do so much damage. Like, she was able to do 800,000 damage in one of my videos. It was crazy. Hwaryun is definitely an amazing character, an amazing support. The fact that she provides that attack percent buff and also that crit buff is really, really good. So Hwaryun definitely up there in that S tier list. And red units are absolutely eating now. Like, they're actually doing really good with red units. So Hwaryun is definitely up there. Now for the next character, I'm gonna put Rack. Now Rack is a tank unit. Now Rack is basically like a situational character. If you don't have a lot of copies of Rack, Rack is immediately B tier. If you don't have a lot of copies of him, he's going to instantly die on the battlefield. He's just going to die instantly if you don't have enough copies of him. I might even put him at C tier. If you don't have enough copies of this guy, he's going to be absolutely dog water if you don't have enough copies of him. But once you have a lot of copies of him, he is immediately A tier for sure. Rack is A tier when you have a lot of copies of him, because that will increase his survivability when you have more copies of him. So Rack, the fact that, you know, he's a situational character, he's A tier when you have copies of him, and he's C tier when you don't have copies of him. I'm gonna put him in between, and I'm gonna put him in B tier for sure. Because I feel like if you have copies of him, A tier. You don't have copies of him, C tier. So Rack is basically a situational character. Now the next character we have is Wang Nan. Now Wang Nan is absolutely OP. This character is busted. He's an amazing DPS character, just absolutely amazing. The fact that he's able to increase his own critical damage based off of how many yellow units you have on your team is absolutely amazing. And the fact that he has a stun included in his kit is really good. And he also has a resurrection ability where he can revive himself when he's about to die. Wang Nan is just an amazing range unit. 100%. This guy is A tier. Because not A tier, S tier. Because you don't even have to give him a lot of copies in order for him to be good. You could literally just give him one copy. He will still be good because of that stun, that critical damage buff, the resurrection, and the fact that he's able to do more damage. Like, he's able to apply that self buff and do more damage. And he's a ranged unit. Ranged units is easy for ranged units to survive on the field because they're not on the front lines, you know, taking damage. He's in the back line just doing damage, dishing out damage. So, and plus his ultimate skill does so much damage. The only flaw is the fact that his ultimate skill, the animation for him to like use his ultimate skill, it takes a while. When he lands it, he does so much damage. So Wang Nan for sure, OP, S tier. One of the best SSR units for sure, with Hwaryun. Now the next one we have is Hats. Now Hats, I don't even have to explain myself. Hats, okay. Hats is in a similar situation with Rack, because Rack, when you don't have copies of him, Rack is bad. But when you do have copies of Rack, Rack is amazing. Hats is almost similar to Rack, because in order for Hats to be absolutely amazing, you have to have a bunch of copies of him. Right now, I'm at the purple ascension right now. I'm at like 2 purple stars. So my Hats is doing so much damage. And the reason why you want to have so many copies of Hats is because the more copies you have of him, the more he'll be able to survive on the battlefield and do more damage. So when you don't have a lot of copies of Hats, Hats is for sure an A tier when you don't have a lot of copies of him, because he's going to die instantly. But if you have a lot of copies of Hats, S tier for sure. His damage when you have a lot of copies of him is just absolutely insane. So Hats is for sure. I'm going to keep him in S tier because he's just an amazing unit. Now the next character we have is this guy right here. This guy with the scythe. Now this character, he is a really strong DPS unit. He's like a nuke. He does so much damage because basically when he falls asleep, he's going to absorb the damage that the enemies do to him. So when he's going to sleep, he's going to create a shield. And when enemies are doing damage to him, he's going to basically absorb all that attack. And then when he wakes up, he takes 1 damage or more while sleeping. So basically, his survivability is actually pretty nice because of that Shinsu shield. And the fact that the barrier equals 1000% of his attack is absolutely crazy. So this character, his special skills will make him really good because he does so much damage when he uses his special skill. If you pair him up with Rachel, He's good. Like Rachel will literally gather everybody up, and then he's just gonna nuke everybody with his special skill. So this character is for sure. I'm gonna put him at a solid A tier for sure, because he is really really strong in terms of damage and survivability. Now the next character we have is Evan. Now Evan, I'm just gonna put him up here right now. Evan is just busted. That I feel like the main reason why he's so busted is because of the immortality buff. The fact that his special skill allows your team to stay alive and don't die is just absolutely amazing. There's really nothing more I can say besides his immortality buff is just amazing. So Evan, one of the best supports in the game for sure because of that immortality. Now the next character we have is Evan Kill. Now Evan Kill, she's an absolute monster in PvP. Evan Kill is for sure S tier as well, because when you're going up against her in PvP, she will literally nuke your team. She is crazy. The fact that she has I think she has immunity. Let me check her kit real quick. Her passive, she could basically decrease the HP recovery amount of her target by 50%. So let's say she's going up against a Hats unit, she will literally like decrease Hats HP recovery, so that's going to make Hats die quicker. So Evan Kill is just an amazing character in terms of damage and her debuff capabilities. Really strong character. Now for our next character, I think this is the last SSR plus. Yeah, this is the last SSR plus. We have Khun Mashni. Now Khun Mashni, she is not bad. She's actually pretty good. Really strong character. So far, every single SSR plus in the game is just really, really good. So I'm really gonna put her in S tier as well, because her damage in PvP is absolutely crazy. Now for PvE, she can be good, but for PvP, I feel like she mostly shines in PvP because her damage, her lightning, Shinsu explosions, the lightning field is just crazy, man. And the fact that her basic attack increases by 40% and her basic attack transforms into a 3-pronged piercing attack is crazy. So she's definitely S tier for sure. Now the next character we have is Rachel. Rachel, A tier. Really good character. The fact that she has really good crowd control. She has a really good crowd control kit because she's able to keep all your enemies grouped up. And if you pair her up with this guy right here with the scythe, he's just going to nuke all of them. So Rachel's really good. I feel like the only flaw with her is the fact that she steals energy. So whenever she links herself with an ally unit, she's going to steal that energy from that ally unit. So Rachel, really good unit. Recommend you guys to use her. Now next character we have is I think it's Subasa. What's his name? No, Shibisu. Shibisu, he is a pretty decent support, not bad. I'll say the biggest flaw with him is the fact that he dies so quickly, because he just charges straight up into the middle of the field. He's a support character, but the fact that he stays in the front line is pretty weird, so I'm going to put him in a B tier. His support capabilities are actually not that bad. It's actually pretty good. The fact that he increased the attack of yellow element allies by 32% is absolutely crazy. He'll literally allow your hats to do more damage, but I just feel like he dies way too quickly. So he's definitely B tier for sure. Now the next one we have is Alec Crocodile Girl right here. We have Anak. Now Anak, she's a DPS unit. She can do a lot of damage, but I feel like compared to other characters that we have right now, I feel like other characters are just way better than her, because the only thing she's really good at is just doing damage. Because her passive, she ignores damage that is 50% or below her max HP once. This only happens once and the cooldown is 10 seconds. So I feel like she's more of like a DPS unit. She can do a lot of damage for sure, but I'm gonna put her in B tier. I'm gonna put her like in second top in B tier for sure. Now for the next character, we have this guy. He's a blue unit. This character right here is actually not that bad in PvP and PvE as well. He can do decent damage, but I feel like his kit is just not enough. So I'm also going to put this character in the B tier for sure. It's going to be right there below her. He can do really good damage with his special skill. He's not a bad character. It's just that there's other characters that can do way more than him. So investing in him is really not really worth it. Now, I have this guy right here as well. I used him before. He's not that bad, but his special skill animation takes forever and it's really slow. So I'm gonna move this guy in. I'm gonna move him on like in the bottom of the B tier list. His damage potential is actually not that bad. He can do some pretty decent damage, but special skill animation just takes forever to happen. Now for this character right here, she is absolutely pretty cool. Like her damage capabilities are actually pretty nice. I think I have her as well. I'm definitely gonna try to build her up because her active skill, she shouts to drop arrow-shaped sound waves on the enemy. The sound wave crush the enemy, dealing 100% of her attack as damage 4 times and locking them for 2 seconds. That active skill is actually pretty cool. The fact that, you know, she's able to lock the enemies for 2 seconds is actually not that bad. And her passive, she plays an upbeat to it at the start of the battle, increasing the critical hit rate of the ally with the highest attack by 20% and their attack speed by 20. So if you're using her with this little chicken guy right here, she can actually be pretty good with this guy. So I'm definitely going to put her in the B tier list. She can be a really solid character. You just have to put her in the right team. And we have this guy right here as well. I don't really play with him as much, so I'm not really gonna put him in this tier list. These people right here, I haven't really played with them, so I'm not gonna put them in the tier list because I haven't touched them at all. But these are all the characters that I touched so far, and yeah, man, that's my tier list. What do you guys think? Do you guys agree? Do you guys disagree? Put your thoughts down below in the comment section. I'd like to see how you guys feel. But anyways, I'll be leaving the video at that. Make sure you guys don't roast me in the comment section. Remember, this is 50% of my opinion, and some of these characters on this tier list, like, it's actually a fact that, you know, some of these characters are S tier, A tier, you know, B tier, and C tier. So put your thoughts down below in the comment section what you guys think. But anyways, I'll be leaving the video at that. I hope you all have a good one. Stay hydrated, stay safe, and I'll be seeing you guys soon. Peace.